Heart of the Matter presents the ugly truth about domestic violence with your host, Juvel, with special guest Napoleon Black, pastor, counselor, and author. Tune in next week, Thursday. You don't want to miss this episode. Tune in on August 20th at 8 p.m. on presenceradio.com, Facebook Live, and TikTok Live. You don't want to miss this episode. See you then. Tonight, we are tackling a very serious and often painful topic: domestic violence. Domestic violence is not simply about physical abuse. It includes emotional, verbal, psychological, sexual, financial, and controlling behaviors that leave deep wounds, sometimes wounds that cannot be seen. We must ask an important question: what does God really says about abuse? How should the church respond when someone is being hurt in a relationship or marriage? Join me with this very important topic and very interesting conversation with Napoleon Black. Good evening, everyone. Welcome again to another intense episode of Heart of the Matter, and I am your lovely host, Juvel Livermore. Today we have Mr. Napoleon Black here, and we're going to be doing a very interesting interview pertaining to domestic violence, understanding domestic violence and what it is, and how we as a people, as a nation, can work together to make this epidemic become lesser and less in our community. All right, so welcome tonight to our show, and it's very amazing to have Mr. Black here with us because one, he's not only just a pastor, he's a marriage counselor, he's a marriage officer, he's an author. He wears so many hats, and he's going to go ahead and introduce himself so he can give you the more detail about himself.
Well, Juvel, I'm not sure if there's much more detail that I need to give. Perhaps suffice to say that I've been in pastoral ministry for just over 30 years now, and working with couples and working with families come with their strengths, their weaknesses, their highs and their low points. So I am really grateful to you to have me share with you. And I hope that in this conversation we will be able to give some clarity,
Right.
And to share with persons who may themselves be going through that space, offer some compassion, and as well to give some biblical perspectives and just what the reality is.
Right.
So thank you very much.
You are so welcome. And of course, he's no stranger. Mr. Black was actually my marriage counselor.
Yes.
We did premarital counseling together, me and my husband, with you. And you were also our wedding officiator. You officiated our wedding.
Yes.
So he's no stranger. And anytime he's having any marriage seminars, he always welcomes us to come and to help us grow as a couple. So that we're grateful for all the things that you have guided us with. So I know this topic is definitely your forte, and I know you'd help our listeners understand in a more dynamic way how it affects our couples spiritually, physically, and emotionally.
And not only the couple, but whomever else may be in that space with them. For instance, the children, because that's important as well.
Right, most definitely. So before we go into any other, we want to first understand what is domestic violence, and what are the different types of domestic violence.
Domestic violence is that pattern of behavior where one person tries to gain control over the other or over a family setting. So it includes physical violence, it includes emotional violence, it includes trying to intimidate. It includes trying to threaten. It includes financial control. It includes spiritual manipulation, the whole range of abusive behavior that you can think of will come into that space. It's sexual abuse. It's the kind of things people try to do simply to control another, to take away power from somebody else, and to make that person become almost subservient in that way. So these are the many various forms it takes, and more, But I guess as the conversation unfolds, we can maybe see some more.
Most definitely. So this is a very serious issue, and in our society, it's almost like it has become the norm.
Yes.
As a guidance counselor in working in the school with children, how the children treat each other, how the male treat the female, no matter how young they are, from grade 1 all the way up. It's almost like it's natural to be physically, emotionally abusive towards each other. So we see that it's affecting our younger generation. So how do we break that kind of cycle, especially for our children?
Well, even before we get that, you raised an important point of just what's happening generally in our society with domestic violence. We are seeing, for instance, in the latest statistics that we have, an increase in domestic violence from 2021 2022. We're told that it is up by as much as 16% in its various forms. And we're being told that 24% of Jamaican women between the ages of 15 and 49 have reported physical violence, sexual abuse from their partner. We're also being told that 29% of our women have reported some form of emotional abuse, especially in that personal space with their partners. We're also being told of economic abuse, and that so many couples, men and women by the way, are facing abuse from their partners, intimate partner violence it is called. And there has to be a concrete, intentional looking at it, just as you're now doing, so we can know how best to tackle it and what tools we need to bring to try to at least cauterize it, if not control it.
And that's what we're seeing. So those are the statistics, and that's very, very high, but those are what we know of.
The reported cases.
It's just the reported cases.
Yes.
It's just what we're aware of. What I see when it comes on to relationship with men and women is the more, especially on the social media, on the news, it's the more negative aspect.
Absolutely.
So our show, of course, Heart of the Matter, is definitely, we want to try to bring a different perspective to young couples, to say that it's not all what you see.
Yes.
No relationship is perfect. No marriage is perfect. But there are couples who are actually thriving and doing well and actually honoring God with their lives. So I know it's hard to talk about, but why is it hard for many of us to talk about this issue? Why is it so sensitive?
Well, first of all, as Christians, we want to give the panacea to people that everything is all right with us, We are spirit-filled, we are spirit-led, and because we are spirit-filled and we're spirit-led, we don't face the problems that ordinary people face. Nothing could be farther from the truth.
Right.
So we hide behind this veneer of spirituality rather than face the real problems in our relationships. Then there is shame, wondering, did I make the right decision in marrying this person? There is fear. If we break up, how am I going to manage? And then there is confusion. I'm not recognizing this person that I'm now married to. In some spaces too, there is, how will my family deal with this if they know that my wife is beating me? If she's abusing, if she's taking me for granted. And so silence seemed to be the best way to go, rather than to say, I need to talk to somebody. Sometimes to person in the position of power become so domineering that there are going to be some backlash if you try to talk about it. You can't tell anybody that I'm beating you, because nobody's going to believe you, because I am Napoleon Black. So you go there and try and see who is going to believe you. And so people settle rather than confront.
That's more of a controlling
Yeah, man,
behavior. And that's one
absolutely.
of the signs.
It is, yes.
I remember the case of the Silveras.
Yes.
And when we kind of saw both sides of domestic violence coming out. Yes, he did something that was terrible, where he unalived his wife. But he also complained of her being verbally abusive towards him. And I think a lot of persons kind of shut that part down, because it's a female, as a man you should be able to man up and take the verbal abuse. But it really is, it does affect people psychologically.
It does.
So in a case like that, remember you mentioned being someone high up in
Nobody's going to believe you that you are an abuser. Nobody's going to believe the person being abused that this person is meeting these things up to me because of who this person is.
Right. So if Joylan had complained about being abused by his wife, then what would be the response of the police? What would be the response of the
friends and those associated,
Right.
That's important.
So we see that it's not very an easy conversation to have, but there are issues with males and females who are experiencing this, and we want to talk about how to deal with it. So what are some of the signs? We did identify a few signs.
We become abusive when we have unrealistic expectations in the marital space. If, for instance, in our church spaces, the husband expects his wife to submit. It is not that she don't respect him enough, but she is an Abigail kind of a wife. She's strong, she's assertive,
Right.
and a lot of our men don't want their wives to be assertive. They want her subservient, serving him, looking after the children, satisfying himself sexually when he wants. So there are all of those that come in the conversation that we don't talk about. But some of the signs are where a spouse don't want you to talk to anybody. Want to talk to your family, don't want you to talk to your friends.
So they isolate you.
Isolation,
from your
right.
environment.
And seeing you talking to somebody, you get rage, jealous and rage. So who is that? Why are you talking to him so long? Why your body language saying to him, I like you, or I'm available? So there's a constant fear of losing that person. It also manifests itself in one person always feeling the need to borrow your phone and go through it. Your text messages, your pictures, and God help you if you have a part of your phone where you keep secret information. It comes also in a place where one is belittling the other, where somebody is showing anger and infantilizing is a word, where you make the person always feel small. And sometimes some women feel it's always better to keep the peace, because if me get him upset, if me get him angry, it go and create more problems. So they're always under the pressure to keep the peace rather than upset somebody who's going to hit them, who's going to abuse them, who's going to talk down to them, or even hurt the children so that they would be hurt. So it comes in these various ways.
Okay. So what can what can, if a couple is in a relationship and this is happening to them, what is it that they can do? How can the wife or the man, or how can they get through this? What can they do?
First of all, just own that there's a problem. If you are not willing to own that I am abused, or as I hear anecdotally, I have not seen any studies to support it, that some women think that it's okay to be abused as a sign of love. If there's not willingness to confront it and to break it, it will perpetuate. So there has to be a disposition that says, this is not the way I want to live. We know that for some people, wanting to leave is not an easy thing. It might be in their heads, but how am I going to manage financially? What do I tell the people close to me that thought that this was the perfect and ideal marriage? How do I live as Mrs. So-and-so and not be living with my husband? How do I manage the questions and all of that? So what needs to happen is a serious and intentional assessment to determine, can I stay? Should I go? Or does this mean I'm just going to take a break? What happens to the children in the time? Can I take them? Can I manage having them? Or do I send them out to a grandparent or a friend? And a lot of stuff that have to come in this conversation. But there has to be that willingness to own up and say, there need to be some decisions in terms of the way forward. It might mean seeing a counselor, talking to a pastor, a therapist, or somebody.
Or even reporting it.
Well, even before we get to reporting, because we know in our culture, if you go to the police, sometimes it's not so easy to especially when men report abuse.
Right. On the male perspective.
That's sometimes it's part of the challenge. If you go to some of the other agencies that are more balanced, you may be helped, And that's what makes a difference.
So there's so many things to take into consideration when it comes on to if you're in a domestic violence situation, you wanting to leave. You mentioned going to getting help, getting counseling, going to the church. Let's talk a little bit about the church. How can the church play a role in helping persons who are in domestic violence? And how can we, at church, a lot of married couple come to church. How can we make the conversation so open that persons are willing to come when there is such a problem, even if the person is a leader in the church?
A part of the problem is that the church is not very caring, and I say it as a church leader myself, because for many people, church is not a refuge. We preach it but we really don't practice it. So we have to retrain church to be a place where persons who are being abused feel it's safe to come and share with somebody. Church is supposed to be a place where we can protect the vulnerable, offer a non-judgmental atmosphere. We don't have to be talking about sin and all of that. Look at Jesus's approach to the Samaritan woman, to the woman caught in the very act of adultery, to that sinful woman who he allowed to anoint him. It is going to be the shifting of a mindset that because you are abused, you must have done something wrong.
Right.
And even our own conversation of the woman by the well, we argue that she was an immoral woman because she has had 5 men, when in fact she was married 5 times. And if anything, at best, it must be the men left her hurting, wounded, emotionally bruised, spiritually rejected, the whole list. But we don't tend as church to see that narrative. And we need a shift in our own thinking, to help people to understand better that abuse and hurt and trauma will come in all kinds of ways. So for those cases, it's not cases of sin in their lives. And even where there's sin, what do? We have to just put down the rocks. As those people who wanted to stone this woman, Jesus says, "You who are without sin, go ahead, throw your stones." Nobody did, thank God.
I mean, they couldn't.
They couldn't. Well, I guess if they did, they would show who they are. And then Jesus says, "Leave your life of sin." So he's not saying you're caught, haha. He's saying, okay, you're caught. Let's do better. And then we will have to, as church, create the atmosphere where people have the opportunity, have the space, have the time, have the interventions to help them to do better.
Right.
To live differently, to function differently. But who is going to spend that time? Because if we know that this person is adulterous, we're going to shun the very appearance of evil. If we know that this person is in a situation where his wife is beating him, what kind of man that would allow him wife to beat him without understanding the dynamics that he may be going through? And we don't want to associate with people who appear to be failures, especially as church, especially in this time when we think that our spiritual success is that we look good and sound good. We don't want to dirty up our hands with people who don't seem to be doing well. So the church needs a whole heap of re-educating.
Right, sir, this look like it needs more like a revival, a spiritual upliftment, something, to give us back our spiritual God perspective, our spiritual eyes. I
am wary of words like spiritual revival because for too many people, spiritual revival has been some mushy. We go to a whole week of something and we had a revival meeting, but who is willing to spend the time on the ground with somebody who's hurting for a year?
Well, that's true, and that has to come from the heart. It has to be a heart shift,
Yes.
a heart change.
And this is why Christian is not an emotional moment
Right.
thing. It's ongoing, long term, on the ground. Jesus spent 3 years with these men, training them, and even then they weren't getting it right.
That's right.
And we must have that similar kind of commitment to invest ourselves as church in people who are hurting.
What do we do when it comes? I know that as a people, a lot of things need to happen from within. We have to have a heart change.
Yeah.
But in terms of our children, because I'm realizing that a lot of young people, not children, young people are shying away from getting married because of this very same topic, the issue of being abused or being a domestic violence relationship. So they're shying away from getting married, and now the age for getting married is more in your 30s.
Yes.
And not in your 20s.
Right.
So you know what, I'm afraid of men. Men have a tendency to say that women are
Gold diggers.
Delilahs, them are gold diggers.
Yeah.
So they're not going to bother with that. What can we do to change that perspective of our young persons who they actually do want a relationship? It's not that they don't, but there's just the fear of actually getting into a relationship and staying committed.
First of all, we have to break the fairy tale of what marriage is. The knight in shining armor coming to rescue the damsel in distress model. And that model doesn't help people to deal with their day-to-day realities. So we have to help people to understand that marriage is hard work. Being in love don't mean we are always on the honeymoon or we're on the north coast. It means that somebody have to wash up the plate, somebody have to take out the chimney, somebody have to change the baby. Those are the underground realities, but we don't talk about them. Also, we come to marriage with our own personalities. So your personality and your personality issues are going to be different from your husband's.
Right.
Then now we have to think of the life change issues that we face. Somebody lose their job, somebody is going through menopause. All of these related things that we have to reflect on. How do we navigate that space to ensure stability? One, couples and churches have to start just helping people to move away from this health and wealth conundrum and just help people to be emotionally safe for themselves. Because even the people who are saying, I don't want to get married, themselves are not safe. So people have been taught what it means to be, first of all, an emotionally safe person for marriage. Secondly, it might not even be a bad thing not to want to get married. If marriage is not your gift, you just have to learn how to manage your proclivities, your desire for sexual fulfillment, your desire to want a little bit more money that you by yourself will not be able to have. How do I manage those? And so you have the conversation. But as well, we have to see the models around us where marriages are successful.
Right.
And the tragedy is we don't see a lot of it.
No, we don't.
And
the focus is on the negative perspective.
Even so, in formal media, if you can call it formal anymore, what we get on TV is a husband cheating, a husband lying to his wife, a wife having other men, and the whole narrative is so negative. And then even some of the jokes is about failure and just to make marriage look bad.
Right.
As an institution, if you listen to some of the things that go on in the sitcoms or in the series, always trying to make marriage look bad. So there has to be a deliberateness on our part as Christians and Christian leaders, and in what you do to reframe the narrative about marriage. Because you didn't get married to your amazing husband just because he looks good. You want to demonstrate that yes, this can work in a meaningful, practical, God-honoring way.
Right.
Because this is what God wants for us. And then tell your story.
That's right.
Invite others to tell their story of their successes. And don't believe the lie that we are 38 years suffering because the only ring that you got out of this marriage is suffering.
Oh, yeah. I get that. I think that's all.
It's a tragedy and these are some of the stories we tell and we believe, and we have to change that narrative that, when we got married, when we had the gift exchange, the exchange of rings, it's a giving of the one to the other of all of who I am in a meaningful way.
Right. So basically, young people have to understand the reality
Absolutely.
of marriage. That is not all.
Not the fairy tale.
No fairy tale.
Even when you're marrying somebody who is giving you $1 billion, because it's not money that made the relationship work. It's just how we relate to each other as a couple.
Exactly.
And what makes a difference.
So for persons who are experiencing domestic violence, you're in a relationship,
Yes.
you're already experiencing it. Where are some places that these persons can go? So we spoke a little bit about the church, but are there other institutions that they can go for assistance?
There are Christian organizations, Family Life Ministries, for instance. They have ongoing programs. Even if we even go back to churches, there are churches with effective couples ministries, and where those are built in to make couples make helpful choices about the way forward, how to, where to, what to. There are also government agencies that offer safe houses, safe spaces.
Yeah, like the Women's Center.
Women's Center. And I hear too that even the men now have a center, which I think is a good thing. to help them, even to take a break from the hurt and the abuse and the pain of a difficult space. And when we find those resources, it makes a difference. Wherever there are social agencies, we can have conversations with those who are in the helping professions, to help persons work through their issues. Then there are organizations and groups who are committed to family life transformation and taking men by themselves or taking women by themselves just to work through the distinctive issues that men face and that women face is also very useful.
That's right. That's right. So, in the aspect of getting help, going to refugees, a place that you can go to get help, getting counseling, going to the churches, if there is such a thing as, we want married couples to ride through the storm, would we say, depending on the situation, how do we encourage someone to say work through the forgiveness and trying to still keep the marriage intact somewhat, because that is what really God would really want for couples. But is there an aspect of forgiveness, going back into the relationship, working it through, staying together?
Yes and no. Yes. I'm thinking of Hagar. Remember Hagar?
Yes.
She was being abused by both Abraham and Sarah, or Sarai as she was at the time. And she ran away. And then God says, go back. But going back must begin with, what am I going back to? So there has to be an assessment of what am I going back to. Forgiveness is important, but forgiveness does not mean reconciliation. So we have to help persons and couples to understand that I will forgive you. Forgiveness is really about me not holding on to bitterness and resentment and anger and all of those things. It's me. 'Cause the first thing Jesus did on the cross was to forgive. But he was still feeling the sting of the pain and the insults, the stones being thrown at him. He was feeling it all. But he was willing to forgive, not based on what he was feeling, but his own disposition, almost in a way to protect himself from bitterness and anger and wanting revenge and all of those emotions that come. Because you see, when you're unable to forgive, you are kind of throwing acid in a plastic bag.
All right.
So we have to understand that forgiveness is about ourselves. Reconciliation is a different thing. Reconciliation begins where a person is willing to accept forgiveness and where a person is willing to work on themselves. So I'm going to come back to that space where I'm recognizing that I need to change. I need to, for us as Christians, repent. I need to offer that person that I'm hurting or I have hurt hope. I have to offer them reason for one to reconnect and rebuild. And of course, I want to rebuild trust. When trust is lost, you don't get it back overnight. Because the trust process, though given, if it is going to be maintained, has to be repaired. And if there's no willingness to repair, trust is not going to be rebuilt. On the other side of that, we must be careful when we forgive and when we go back not to enable somebody. Because, some of us, we say we're sorry. We do all the right things. We stop calling the girl, we stop visiting her, we stop texting her, and we show you say we delete all of our messages out of our phone. But we're just doing it for a moment to make you feel comfortable to come back. When you're back, the behavior continues or resumes. So there has to be that willingness to offer forgiveness first for yourself, because that's where it must begin. It must begin. And then where there's reconciliation, it is demanding accountability, it is demanding change and transformation. It is not handing over trust as you did at marriage, but verifying as you go along. Because the two are important. Yeah.
So how do we see that there might be an issue of abuse and domestic violence before we get into the situation? Because most times you're in a marriage, but it was there before you got married, but you did not, either you miss the signs or you ignore the sign. Like, what can a young lady do,
or a young man,
or a young man,
yeah.
or a young man do, either one,
yeah.
do when they see the signs from early?
Don't ignore the signs.
Most definitely, yes.
So if he's hitting you, and I say a joke I make, for God's sake, take him seriously. He hits you first jokingly, then he hits you angrily, and then he does other things. So if the person is doing inappropriate things, call it out. And a part of the problem is our own unwillingness to rock the boat, because here's so who doesn't want the relationship to work, and we will overlook stuff that hurts later on, or we make the mistake of saying, I can fix him,
Right.
or I can fix her later on, but there's no such
Or maybe
thing.
they'll change.
Or they will change, and we can pray that they will change, and prayer is important. True. But some change come over time and come out of confrontation, come out of accountability. And too many relationships have neither accountability nor that willingness to confront. And that creates a challenge. So you have, if you see the red flags, don't ignore them. Don't think you're being petty. Don't think you're being oversensitive. If you see the things, call them out. If you've gotten to that place before marriage, stop the wedding. So we'll get married 2 years down the road, because I'm not sure if this is going to work. You know? And I've seen people do that. Look as well at patterns. So if the man is stealing money, why are you going to marry him? Because there's a pattern there, and that's why I say to couples, don't tell people to turn over a new leaf. Look at the old book. So you can see the patterns that the person, in all likelihood, will take into the relationship. And where patterns are concretized in person's character, they're going to create problems in the marriage. Even if it's not a marriage, it's going to create problems later on. So see them for what they are, call them out, and then sometimes you might just have to confront the person in love, of course. But you must say to this person, not in a threatening way, this relationship must be on pause until we work through or see how better we can deal with this particular trajectory.
All right. So we're seeing that before you go any further, don't ignore the red flag.
Don't. Even if it's not red, it might be purple. You know?
You know, when persons are in love, they
Yeah, man.
tend to turn a blind eye to anything.
That is it.
Or even in the desperation for wanting to be married.
Be married, right?
The pressure of you getting older, up in age,
Yes.
you need to tie the knot. So all of that is just a part of the process. But do not ignore the red flags
Or the purple flag.
or the or the
Can
purple
I tell
flag.
you no,
And for
because
those,
it might not read. Don't wait until it reach red, But if you
right,
can nip it earlier on, that is better
that's
than when you
definitely.
actually get there.
All right. So we did cover a lot of perspective pertaining to domestic violence and what it is and some of the signs, and we spoke about young people and how we can help them transition. In terms of any young person now who are in a relationship, they're wanting to get married, and they've heard this interview, what would be your advice to them?
I just finished a manuscript called Why Marriages Fail and Building Relational Resilience. And the thesis of the work is, are you sure that God has given you the gift of marriage or singleness? So the first chapter looks at where's my call? Am I called to be single, or am I called to be married? And we do a question here at the end of it. So that's the first thing. Where is the gift? To be single or to be married? And secondly, I encourage people before they do premarital counseling to do personal counseling. To work through their own issues. I know that I'm struggling with pornography. Work through it with your counselor. I know that I'm struggling with my self-esteem. I'm always telling people yes. Of course, if you're always telling people yes, then your no means nothing. So you have to look at yourself. One, whether you're called to be single or to be married. Two, take that time before a counselor to work through your own personal issues that you are aware of. And then, if you're moving forward, do the premarital counseling in a serious, not somebody who's a tone Christian, who love Jesus, all right, want to get married. But break out all the issues. Finances, matters of families of origin, one of the most troubling areas. How are we planning for the future as a couple? What are the main issues in terms of what are the things that inform how we live? And then, especially as Christians, do you understand what it means that this relationship is about Jesus and his bride? What does that mean? Then who leads and how is leadership understood in this marriage? Those issues must be discussed in a very, very serious way. Don't plan your wedding date until you go through some of these things, because if you do that, you might find, oh my, we can't go back now, even though we're now learning these things, because we have a date coming up.
But you can still leave right before the date, right?
Not if you spend whole lot of money. You know what I mean?
Well,
Not
that's
if you book
true.
the
If you
hotel and
invest a lot.
pay the hotel whole of money and all of these things. So I say to people, while it can happen, you say to people, don't spend any money yet like that until you've talked to your counselor and at least you're on the journey to some clarity. Because too often people find out that, we are making the wrong decision. But we have told parents, we have invited friends, and bridal party, a little bit, buy up them clothes.
That's true.
And then you go through, and then you suffer.
It's tough. That was one thing I was definitely fearful of before getting married, being in a domestic violence or in an abusive relationship.
Yes.
Because once you get your foot in,
Yes.
it's the hardest thing to get your foot out.
True.
And you mentioned earlier children being
Yes.
involved
Yes.
and finances, and it's just a lot of. So really and truly, if you're a young person and you're in a relationship and you're going to get married with your boyfriend or girlfriend or your partner, really take it serious before you make that big move.
Absolutely.
One last thing, I think I forgot to ask about the children who are affected, because when persons are married, they usually have children. How do we help those children who are affected in domestic violence?
Yeah, one of the
Homes.
big mistake we make is to say no, they're not aware. Like,
They don't understand.
we don't understand. That's not true. As young as they are, they understand the energy in the room. Yeah, they might not be able to know all of the related and the big terms and so on, but they are living in a space where energy is being emanated, and because of that, they are feeling what's happening in the relationship, and they get to see, Mom, why are you shouting at Dad? And they say, Mom, you hit that, like that. So they see and they hear and they are processing. And while we don't want our children to grow up to think that mommy and dad will never quarrel, there are some things that must not be done before the children in a way that is going to hurt them, debilitate them, damage them. So some things must be done privately, not because of pretense, but because of protection. Okay? However, you want to help the children to understand that, as you said earlier, this is not a perfect relationship. So when difficult things happen, you might want to say that mommy and daddy are going through a space where sometimes this happens to adults. So talk to them at the level at which they can understand without making them feel like it's their fault. Because sometimes they feel like it's their fault. Oh, mommy, this happened because of what I did, and they take responsibility as children that they shouldn't. Also, for heaven's sake, make we not beat the penny them the way we do, because as some of my mother grow me, and we think that beating up on the children, and so some of these things become intergenerational abuse, because as some of my mother do, and therefore that must happen to you. I spoke with a lady not so long ago, and she said to me, I don't know, she said to me, that have it happened to her because of that me they have to live with, and my mother tell me say that she have to live with. And so we permit these intergenerational curses in our relationships because we have accepted it as normative. Who is going to break it? And that's why this that you're doing is so important, to help couples to break these intergenerational things, not because it is normative, but because we have allowed sin to tell us
It's okay.
that it's okay. It's not. So we have that responsibility to shift and to change. Yeah.
Let's speak a little bit to our men. Our men for a second.
Yes.
Who are actually going through a domestic violence situation. It might not be physical. For the most part, women come across it's more emotional and verbal abuse.
Yeah.
The men, the husbands who are in these kind of situations, what do we do for them? How do we advise them?
We have to remember, and I'm glad you're raising it, Juvel, that men and women are wired differently.
Right.
We don't respond first. In fact, we don't have the language range that our women have to respond to stuff. Also, we are afraid of responding because the culture warns us that we're going to come out wrong anyways. So one, there's the wiring, and two, there is the culture, and thirdly, just some of the things done to us in terms of what happens in our churches don't help us as men in dealing with our maleness. We, for instance, think that because we are men, everything is we in charge of everything. And when we do that, we put a burden on our shoulders that God never intended. You know what happens? He becomes resentful, he becomes distant, and all the kind of things begin to be affect him. Two, when there is not a proper allocation of responsibilities, you are the better financier. But because your husband is male, he takes it on because he's male, and the family finds that they're spending money inappropriately and can't make ends meet, not because the monies are not there, but because the man is a money manager, but him don't have the financial intelligence. You have it, but you can't exercise it because you're female and you must subject yourself to your husband. So those are some of the narratives in the relationship. Thirdly, because of some of us, our fear of hurting our women, World Cup just finished. I want to watch the game. My wife want me to put up the curtain. Me know I must stop watching the game and put up the curtain, because putting up the curtain is more important to her than me watching the game. Guess what? You said to herself, hon, can I just finish watching this? You know what she says? May I go put it up myself? So she gets up, she go put it up herself. You miss the penalty, and you were hoping that your team would have won, but you miss it because she's now upset, and you have to go try to help her to put up the curtain. But as she's climbing up that little ladder, she drop off.
Guilt.
Can you see that?
I'm seeing it.
Yeah.
Because you have to ignore what you really want
Right.
for the sake of her. So.
But you're also doing it angrily, and you're doing it with resentment.
And
Anger.
then if you don't do it, there comes the guilt.
Absolutely. But the guilt happens because even while you're going to help her, she falls off the ladder or whatever she was using to climb up on to get to sort out the curtain. And so we have to understand the difference in the communication wiring between men and women. Men tend to take more time to respond in the communication process just because of the wiring. And so when a man says, I want to talk, when your husband says to you, Juvel, I want to talk, for heaven's sake, whatever you're doing, stop. Talk to him. Because it's called flooding. And when flooding happens, and flooding takes over his mind, and he begins to feel overwhelmed, nothing is going to go right. Because a moment is missed that could have been corrected if you had just taken the time to hear in the moment, you know? And a lot of men feel trapped because they cannot talk and respond to the women the way the women want them to respond. And so learning to hear a man before he gets the flooding is very, very important. Because when he gets the flooding, very often he gets angry. He throws his hands up in the air, and sometimes he gets abusive because the communication process was blocked for him. And when his mind goes there, and it doesn't happen to women that easily or that readily, it happens more to men, all kinds of terrible things happen. The good Christian man will never cuss bad word in their life, start telling wife bad word. Because it's not about the bad word, it's what about the overwhelming feeling that has come, and he now get to the place of a mental block now affecting him. So learning just learning that men and women communicate differently is important, and creating a space in which it does not allow itself to go all the way to him feeling overwhelmed and flooded up. Important. And that's why you have to learn to your husband's communication language. Men in general, but your husband in particular. And sometimes that's when we talk about my husband don't communicate. Is that a husband not communicating? Is the couple not understanding the difference between male communicating and female communicating, and male vulnerability in the communication process to feeling flooded and overwhelmed? And that's a problem.
Wow, so that was a mouthful. Hopefully I can remember. Well, I will remember because I'll listen to the interview.
Okay.
But for our men out there, we want to encourage you to speak,
Yeah, man.
talk, and help your wives understand you.
Yeah.
And of course, wives and partners, be willing to learn.
Yeah.
Basically, be willing to learn and so forth. So of course this topic, not a very easy conversation to have. I think we need to talk about it more, domestic violence, abuse in relationship, and how to get through it. So sir, we want to say thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, Juvel.
Thank you so much for coming on and sharing on Heart of the Matter.
Amen.
And we are definitely grateful. Listeners, I hope you guys learned a lot from this interview, and I hope that you can make it practical in your relationship. See you guys next week. Bye. You press play?
Just keep talking.
Okay.
Keep talking, keep talking.
This is, I'm barely hearing myself though. This is Mr. Black. That's better.
Voice is raised.
Yes, I'm Juvel, and this is Mr. Black.
Testing. 1, 2,
Testing.
3. Test.
I'm